let's look at the 12 links in action, and we'll use as an example killing. So from the first link, we have the ignorance, which is the ignorance through which we are going to engage in the act. That's a mind that is calibrated in such a way that it does not value the life in question. And so link number 2 is the action itself, and that is the movement of mind and body to act on this other individual. Then you have the consciousness of that particular time. So the way we are kind of vibrating, the way our consciousness is, I like to say calibrated, the way our consciousness is, that mode that it's in is, it came about from that ignorance, and then the movement of mind, and then the consciousness of that body at that particular moment. So that is the basis for the name and form, what I like to call the psychophysical entity. Then you have the 6 sense sources, our sensors, the eyes, ears, nose, and so on. And these produce contact with a weapon. And then our feeling tone that arises there is our own pleasure and the pain of the other individual. It's hard to understand this, that what's actually happening is not 2 different karmic situations where there is the individual being killed and me killing. There is one energy happening. There is one karmic seed being planted, and that's irrespective of what one calls subject and the other calls object. They're both happening at the same time. So the joyful engaging in it is what we would call craving, and from that comes the grasping, which is the enthusiasm for similar acts in the future, to do it again. And as I'm often, reminded of how hunters really love to engage in the act of killing and then bragging about it, and even having contests and such. So from the our aggregates at the time of the act are our becoming, and their present and future aspects are birth, and their changing is aging, and the conclusion of it is death. So we're not just talking about one physical lifetime and so on. I mean, it's part of that, but we're also looking back to those chain of dominoes and such. Okay, so we can clarify or classify all of this in what's called the Fourfold Classification. You have the 3 links of ignorance, formations, and consciousness, or ignorance, karma, and consciousness. Those first 3 links are the propelling links. Then you have the 4, which are name and form, to sensation or feeling. Those are the propelling result. And then you have the 3 links of craving, grasping, and becoming. Those are what are called the fully established links. And then you have birth and old age and death, and they are fully established results. So these, if you look at the movement of consciousness through each of these links, you should come to a point. You should be able to see how this the karma is being planted, it's being nourished and nurtured, and then it's growing. And so, consciousness is like a seed, and then karma is like a field. Our craving is the moisture, and then the ignorance is like the act of planting and the fertilizer and stuff. So through these 4, the shoots of name and form develop in the various states of existence, what we would call the psychophysical entity. Now let's look at emptiness flavor number 3, because I love this one. This helps us to maybe illustrate a little bit more of how that consciousness is moving, as well as an explanation of the 2 of like the person doing the killing and the person that's being killed. So the Tibetan says Suk Dan Suk Tsingi, Zuk Dan Zuk Zin Gitsema Zhejian Gitonwa. Okay, Zuk means form, Zuk Zin means grasping at form, Tsema means a valid perception, Zhejian means another substance, Gitonwa means it's empty. So it's empty. The a visible object and the valid perception which grasps at that visible object are empty of any separate substance. So two things have to come together for a function like a sprout. You have to, it has to be established by existing by virtue of appearing to an unaffected state of mind. Okay, and the sprout should exist from its own side through some identity, according to back to Vaibhashika and such. So the first part is necessary, since if it were not, then the sprout would have to be a sprout even to a person who had never been introduced to the idea that a sprout was called a sprout. All right. Now, the really cool thing here about this separate substance that we're talking about, there's no separateness between that, the consciousness that is perceiving the form and the form that's being grasped. Okay. The form and the grasper. Consider the color blue. It is something which is devoid of being of a separate substance from the valid perception which perceives it, because it is invariably always found in combination with it. Think that one through again. Consider the color blue. It is something which is devoid of being of a separate substance from the valid perception which perceives it, because it is invariably found in combination with it. There is, what we're implying here is there's this curtain, there's this thin veil between a localized self and a non-localized consciousness. Okay, I'm not saying that there is, that the outer environment is aware or it is an agency, but where does consciousness have a skin? It doesn't have a skin. There is a perceived, our grasping is what keeps us from going beyond and into understanding that consciousness is everywhere. It's everything. And this localized consciousness, the mark here, when I look at anything, I can never observe it separate from intermixing with it, because it's all part of the same stuff. That's what it means by Zejen. Zejen meaning a different substance. It's the same thing, It's all the same stuff. We are not separate from our reality. We are not separate from nature. We're all a part of it.